Hello beautiful people and welcome to another video. In this one I'll show you how I transformed this old painted chest of drawers into something very cool, cozy and rustic that you can also sell for a large profit, and you can do this yourself, and this doesn't require many tools or great skills. I started by removing all the drawer stoppers, including those questionable replacements, because this is going to make it much easier to clean up the inside and to actually sand those areas. I get many comments from people who say that they like to watch me restore furniture, but they don't feel like they can actually do a project like this themselves. So in this video I'll explain how you can do this yourself, and though I'll be using some tools that I have and you might not, but I'll tell you what you can use instead. So I decided to cut off the base because it was just not going to work for my plan, and though I'm using a very basic and cheap power tool, you can use a simple hand saw, and this is just going to take you a little longer, but you'll get exactly the same result. And you can literally use a piece of wood or something straight to guide the saw to make it easier for yourself. Even if your cut isn't perfect, that's okay, because this will just add to the whole look of this rustic chest of drawers, so don't worry about it. So because this project involves a lot of sanding, the only power tool that you will really need is a sander. But again, you can get one secondhand off Facebook Marketplace for probably 20-30 pounds, so it's really not expensive. And if you really wanted to, you could simply scrape off the paint and do the sanding by hand, but obviously that would take you much longer. As I was sanding, I realized that there were actually several coats of paint, and the one underneath was a different shade of white, so just to be safe I tested for lead later on in the video.
2,000 years later.
Because this was pine, and pine is very soft, there were lots of dings and gouges and bits missing and nuts that just fell out. Lots of paint was embedded in those crevices, so I just used my dental tool to get most of it out. And obviously if you don't have a dental tool, you can use anything that's pointy and sharp, or you can just skip this step altogether.
A few moments later.
Some of the bits were cracked, so I applied a little bit of glue and clamped it together and did some sanding on the inside. There was a lot of paint on the inside and this just took me absolutely forever. So again, it would be very helpful if you actually had a power sander, because obviously that's just gonna take you a long time if you want to do it by hand. As I mentioned at the beginning, because the drawer stoppers were mismatched, I just removed all of them, and also this was just going to make my work much easier. You're not helping, just so you know. I think that Mando approved of my idea as well. I actually thought that this was the color of the top, but I realized that it was just super dirty. So to save on sandpaper, I scraped off the dirt and then did some sanding. This looks like a construction grade pine. It's like the worst piece of pine I've ever seen. It's so knotty. Yeah, this is absolute rubbish. There's even some green in here. There's so many gouges and just cracks and knots and missing bits. This is the poorest quality pine I've ever seen in my life. Which I guess adds to the whole idea of making it rustic, but to be honest, it was quite difficult not to fix all those little things and to restrain myself from filling in all those dings and imperfections. But because the paint was white, I tried to remove most of it because I knew that it would have been very visible if I applied any stain on top of it. So the cool thing about this chest of drawers is that it had many drawers, but that also meant that I had to sand 15 of them, which just took forever. And because the idea was to keep it looking rustic, I had to find the sweet spot between sanding too much and not enough.
Later.
This is a repair that someone made, but this piece of wood wasn't thick enough, so I had to replace it. And obviously, if you're doing something like this at home, you don't need to do it at all. But again, if you want to, you can just use a straight piece of wood or something else that's straight and a handsaw to cut it off. I'm using a router because I have it. And also to show you that this is one of the ways you can repair it. I use the old piece to kind of give me rough dimensions, but the piece of wood that I'm replacing it with is thicker. And again, you can use a simple handsaw to do this, and this wouldn't even take you a long time. I'm just using my fancy tools because I have them. The way I did it, I used some wood glue, I clamped it together, and then I put a couple of screws in just to reinforce the joint. But if you do it at home and if you don't have any clamps, you can also use some screws and they will hold it in place as the glue dries. And because I used the screws, I didn't have to wait for the glue to dry and I was able to start working on this right away. And I used a hand plane just to get the thickness of this piece of wood that I just put in, the same as the rest of the drawer front. And if you want to do something like this at home and you don't have a block plane, you can simply do more sanding or use a piece of wood with the same thickness as the rest of the drawer front. And yes, originally there was a dovetail, but given the look that I'm going for and the state of this chest of drawers, it absolutely makes no sense to redo it. Did I mention that I had to sand 15 drawers? That did take a while, and here's me testing for lead as I mentioned at the beginning. As I was working on this chest of drawers, I found lots of little cracks and things that I had to repair, but I only did those that were absolutely necessary. All the damage and imperfections that were not going to hinder the function of this chest of drawers, I just left them in because they were going to help me achieve the look that I was going for. I did some more sanding with higher grit and I was ready for the final inspection. Looks like Mando was pretty happy with my work, so I did the same on the rest of the chest of drawers.
A few moments later.
Not sure if you remember, but at the beginning when I cut off the base, it left me with two lips or whatever you call it on both ends of this piece, and I was thinking about attaching a base to it, but instead I just planed them flush with the rest of the base, and this will allow me to attach whatever I decide to attach, whether it's wheels or legs, to this chest of drawers. And again, if you want to do something like this at home, you don't need to. You simply make the cut that I did at the beginning flush with the bottom of this piece, and you won't have to worry about it at all. As you can see, a couple of those vertical pieces were a bit wobbly, so I used some screws to reinforce them. If you need to do something like this at home, you can simply use a nail. As always, shout out to all of you wonderful people for watching my videos, liking, commenting, because that allows me to do what I do. And huge thank you to all the channel members. If you guys want to support my channel, you can find all the links in the description. You can buy me a coffee via Buy Me a Coffee or hit the super thanks button. And I put some of the links to tools that I use in the description. If you're interested, you can just have a look. Thank you. This chest of drawers had a certain aroma about it that I just wasn't a big fan of, so I gave it a good clean on the inside, and because it was nice and sunny that day, I left it outside to dry before I did anything else with it. And for everyone who's been asking about Mando and whether he gets along with the other cats in the neighborhood, here's a proof that he does. You didn't think I was done sanding, did you? Like I said, I had 15 drawers to sand, so it took forever, but I also had to sand them inside because they just didn't look great. And when I was finally done with that, I made new drawer stops because, as you remember, I removed all the old ones and some of them were missing. So I made brand new ones, and to make it easier for myself, I use my laser. And this is not a sponsored video, but I just want to show you how you can use a laser when you need to make lots of things that are exactly the same, because, you know, doing it by hand, it would just take you a long time. And you've probably seen me use many different lasers, and this is the one that I've actually kept because this seems to be the sweet spot for what I need. It's the perfect power output, the size, and, you know, its functions. So I really like this one. I'll put a link in the description in case you want to check it out. I basically picked the shape that I wanted and the size that I wanted. I copied it multiple times until I had enough for all the drawer stoppers, and I cut them out. And if you need to do something like this at home, you don't need a laser. You can simply use a rectangular piece of wood and cut it into small pieces. You don't need a fancy shape or anything. I have a laser, so I use it. I actually get comments from people saying something like, oh, if I had all the tools you have, I would be able to do the same type of work. First of all, what's stopping you from buying them? Because it's not like someone gave me all of them. I've purchased them over the last few years and I spent a lot of money on them. True that I received some of them free, but most of them I bought myself. And even the ones that were sent to me for free, they were sent to me in exchange for the content that I made, so, you know, you can do it too. Anyhow, despite using the tools that I use because I have them, if you want to do a project like this and you really think about it, the only power tool that you need is a sander. You also need a screwdriver, a handsaw, and probably a hammer, and that's about it. And if you buy these tools secondhand, I'm sure you can get all of them for less than £50, and that includes sandpaper. Basically, the point of this video is that if you want to get into furniture flipping and restoring, you don't need to know a lot about it, but you need to be smart about choosing the pieces that you want to work on that will allow you to actually make them look great without having great skills. And choosing a piece like this with all the imperfections that you don't need to worry about fixing because they will actually help you achieve the look that you're going for is just a great example. These are actually very similar. I can hardly see any difference between them, maybe when they dry. Before I apply the stain, I wiped everything down with mineral spirit, and that will help me condition the wood because pine is quite difficult to work with and it can get pretty patchy. And this stain that I'm using is oil based, so it's actually the easiest to work with and it gives you a long working time, so you can just wipe it down after applying and it should look great. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I like the two-tone effect, so I went with Jacobean for the main body of the chest of drawers and with driftwood color for the drawers. And if anyone wants to try this at home, oil-based stains are very forgiving and quite easy to work with, so I would highly recommend something like this for your first project. As far as finishing, you can simply use beeswax, but if you want the finish to be more durable, you can use hard wax oil, which you literally apply with a piece of cloth and just wipe off the excess. It's super easy. Because obviously I've got a little more experience and I've tried different products, I'm going to use lacquer and just spray it on, but there are just so many options and you just use whatever you are comfortable with. I'm still waiting for Amazon to deliver the caster wheels that I want to use on this piece, which are similar to these but completely different color, so I'm just going to put these on temporarily so I can move this around easily. And as I mentioned, I'm using satin lacquer for my finish, and this one is from Morel's and it has a fun shaped spray pattern, so it's super easy to apply it evenly and I really like it. I used 5 or 6 coats on the entire chest of drawers, and then I also used it on the insides of the drawers to make it easy for them to slide and to also protect them. Because of the look that I'm going for, I don't really want this chest of drawers to be shiny, so I'm not going to do any polishing or anything. I'll just leave it as it is. So these are the actual caster wheels that I'm going to use, and as you can see they are a bit rusty and this is the look that I wanted. And shout out to David from Mayfield Restorations for helping me with this order. I've got two different types of pulls. I've got these smaller ones for the top drawers because they're really tiny, and these are a bit bigger. I'm gonna put these on all the other drawers. They're almost identical, so I think this is a good look. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm very pleased with the result and I hope that you guys are motivated to try and do a project like this at home. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and see you in the next video. This is pretty funny. I've never actually seen a cat that was high on catnip. It looks like Hugo has had a bit too much. Looks like he's drunk.